the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of the Lighting Guys Show. I am your host, JP Bedell. This is a podcast produced in association with AVNation TV, and we're here to talk about lighting design, integration of technology, and all of the issues that can come up with those things. I'm here with Megan Mazzocco of Architectural SSL, Net Zero Buildings. Let's see, what other magazines are you a senior editor of? Megan is a senior editor at Construction Business Media, where she works on Architectural Products magazine, Net Zero Buildings, and Architectural SSL. She is an amazing follow on Twitter for all of the different products and cool links that she shares day in and day out. If you're not reading any of those three magazines, you need to be, especially Architectural SSL for all the lighting geeks out there. But we're going to talk about where products are, where technology is moving, and what we can expect. So, Megan, thanks so much for coming on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me, JP.
I'm thrilled you're here. So, before we talk about specific stuff, give me a sense for, like, you deal with products and product reviews and getting shown stuff. What's the pace of innovation like these days? How many products are getting in front of you, say, monthly?
Well, in terms of architectural products generally, for every one I write up, there's probably 10 that don't get written up. But in terms of lighting products, I'd say I'll look at anywhere from about 25 to 50 lighting products per month. And that is not just lighting, it's lighting, everything lighting related. So whether it's controls or drivers or fixtures or new chips, that kind of stuff, even custom switch plates and that sort of thing.
Sure.
So yeah, it's everybody's got their new stuff and it's coming out rapid fire, but it does really kind of depend on if it's a month that's close to, let's say, Light Fair or Leducation or a light show. So,
and would you say that, and I know this is a tough question to answer, but by way of percentage, would you say the controls are 50% of the products that you're looking at, or a high percentage, or would you say, or is it more still on the LED side?
It's more still on the LED side, more still on the fixture side, but their controls are growing in terms of what we're seeing. The one thing that I'm noticing a lot that I just got, 2 press releases on just this week is the wireless controls. There is a release just out from Daintree and LG that they are going to be creating a new modular driver that they can sell to LED manufacturers to embed wireless drivers to enable lighting control of LED fixtures.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
That's kind of the latest.
Yeah, I feel like the pace of innovation in controls right now, somebody's going to solve that. There's so many different control protocols right now. There's so many different ways to get access to lighting. But someone is going to sort of start to come up with the next protocol that becomes the standard protocol, and whoever does that is going to, I know that there's so many big behemoths playing in the market, but I feel like we're going to get to somebody that wins, and then the market will kind of shake out, because controls are still a big challenge for a lot of people. Go ahead, sorry.
In terms of fixtures, of course, I'm seeing a lot of fixtures. LED down lighting and what they've always done with, replacing the fluorescent troughers. I mean, that is stuff that is just kind of coming standard now. But of course, I am partial to a lot of the European lighting fixture manufacturers, like
Sure.
the Italian Foscarini, and there's an Aussie company that I started to like a few years ago named Yellow Goat Design, and they do a lot of really beautiful custom LED lighting fixtures, and now they finally have representation in the United States.
Oh, wow.
So I'm really excited about that. They have some just really sexy stuff that they're using the light source to their advantage.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that that's, what we're seeing now is manufacturers are thinking LED first, and it's becoming less about getting LED into traditional form factors. Like as you said, that's pretty much where the industry's been. It's now embracing LED as its own form factor, its own light engine, and what can you do that's different from what traditional light sources used to do, which is really, really exciting because it's taken a while for manufacturers to sort of think that, we're not going back. This is the new source.
Right.
And we're not really breaking any news to say that LEDs arrived, but where do you see it in terms of a comparison to, say, 2 or 3 years ago? I mean, are we at the place now where LED first for all form factors, or is there any where's the innovation these days?
It's hard for me to say, since I've been doing this for 7 years ago, it's hard for me to kind of delineate between the last 2 or 3 years ago, but I know that 5 years ago, a headline on an Architectural SSL magazine on the cover read, "Will LEDs ever be a transformative technology?"
Wow.
And, I'm pretty sure that that is absolutely, being answered in the affirmative now, especially with the push for the codes in California, the very strict energy usage codes, and then all of the net zero building and really high performance buildings, because daylighting and lighting is the only way you're going to get there as a single freestanding building.
We could have a whole other conversation on how LED is transforming architecture and design, because I think that it's undeniable that between the heat loads dropping, the size of the fixtures, slimming down, all of the things that LED brings to the table beyond just energy efficiency, I think design is changing because of what LED is. But do you see specific LED technologies, say, this year that we haven't been seeing as much of in previous years? And I feel like we started off in the RGB world, then it was RGB plus white, then it was who could do the best white. Now it feels like tunable white is the new thing. What other technologies am I missing? What are the things that people should have on their radar?
Well, I was going to bring you through kind of like my LED observed history.
Yeah.
And first it was, we had a conference. I don't know if you knew this, but Architectural SSL used to put on a conference called Arc LED, and it was a little bit ahead of its time because it was equally for lighting designers as it was geared towards architects, and it was not pretty. I mean, we even had lighting designers standing up and crying in front of the room because they had used LEDs that failed or that ended up like a patchwork of different colors of white, or they were completely incompatible with either the dimming or the other light sources in the project. So the first thing that I think LED manufacturers have overcome is the warranties and the failures, and they, extremely improved the binning to avoid that kind of clowny patchwork of color and mixed color temperatures. And then the idea that when LED technology or driver technology improves, you don't want to throw out the whole fixture. on that modularity in design where you can just switch out the driver and still keep your fixture and your LED, I think that was a really big step forward for the adoption of the technology. And then finally, I really think that wireless controls and is going to help, and the built-in wireless controls like GE is coming out with that have not only the wireless controls, but they have a built-in occupancy sensor or also a built-in daylight sensor.
Photocell, yeah, sure.
Yeah, photocell. So they're built according to, you know, what people or maybe building operations and that sort of thing want to say, I just want to buy the light.
Right. Right.
And then have this capability. And the last thing that you and I were talking about in another conversation and about your blog is the tunable white light and how you know, it's such an amazing capacity to be able to take your client into a room and say, hey, just look at this, and I'm going to move this slider, and then you tell me when it's right.
That's right. That's
and
right.
It reminds me of, in terms of for consumers, they're looking at these LED Christmas lights, and some of them are like almost blue, and some of them are almost yellow, and it's these colored temperatures, and I'm thinking, wow, wouldn't that be nice if I could just stand under the Christmas tree with a slider and tell my husband, like, look at when it looks like warm enough.
Well,
the color temperature looks good.
And I think that brings up an interesting point, the idea that on the consumer level, we see companies like Philips and Cree, Apple, Google are all getting into this idea of home automation, the idea that you'd be able to control your home from your smartphone. And I think that we've always had high-end products that were, you know, big control protocols that could do whole buildings and that kind of thing. But to see it happening on the consumer level and moving its way up, I think what you may see is that occupants of buildings will start to say, well, if I can go home and I can flip out my iPad and I can make my, you know, my house change colors, or I can turn my lights on and off from my bed, why can't we change the way the lighting is set in our office from a central iPad or from whatever? And expectations might change, and which will lead to even more adoption of control protocols. Who do you think is, or I shouldn't say who do you think, but do you see the nature of sort of smartphones, tablets, consumer electronics moving into architectural products in a across the board? I mean, lighting certainly, but beyond that.
Across the board, yes. Our graphic designer is our token millennial, and he touts it proudly. And basically, he tells us in more or less words about every kind of interaction. My phone is my remote control for my life. This phone should be able to control the environment around me at the touch of a button, at the download of an app. And I think that is so true. That's so happening. The little, you know, Bluetooth signal, I think, is just something that consumers are drawn to. You see that in the bathroom. You know, the bathroom becoming the new living room, where you have your mirror that has the concealed television, and it also has Bluetooth connected speakers, so that while you're getting ready in the morning, you can listen to your music, your iTunes, and also in the shower head. Like Kohler has a shower head that is Bluetooth connected, and it's a speaker inside the shower head.
Yeah.
And jam out while you're, you know, thinking in the shower. And then this really interesting lighting app that I just heard of a couple days ago. It's called Lumify, and this lighting designer named Beatrice Witzgow, she wanted to create a more intuitive software for clients with curated and pre-composed lighting solutions, whether they wanted to relax or focus or have, like, let's say in a hotel or hospitality environment, more of a romantic scene. So what she did is she created an app with a bunch of other input from other professional lighting designers that will put that kind of capability in the palm of their hands. So I think as people are seeing this at home with their Bluetooth connected light bulbs, and that, you know, their app can just set it to what they want, I think they're going to expect it elsewhere.
I think you're right, and I think that the other thing that's so interesting to me is that my perception of a given lighting scheme might be different from yours, might be different from someone else's. The ability to tune that and control that, both in dimming and color temperature, and then eventually RGB and the other things that are already out there, gives every individual the chance to sort of change their environment in a really live, organic way, in a way that almost no other medium can do. I mean, music can certainly do it, but no visual medium that I can think of at this point can change the way that lighting can. And so I love the way that LED and control are sort of developing at the same time. The marriage of the two is really impressive to me. Just sort of shifting a little bit and talking about controls, you know, you're one of the editors at Net Zero Buildings, which means sustainability is a big topic for you, and energy savings. Can you talk a little bit about where you see the lighting industry? I feel like everybody was green 3 or 4 years ago, right? Like green was the thing to be, right? Kind of like, I'm thinking like pre-recession, like green was the thing to be. And then the recession hit, people kind of like backed off the green thing a little bit. Now it feels like it's just sort of by default, well, we're LEDs, so we must be sustainable. But where do you see the differentiators? Who are what products or what schemes are the differentiators in Net Zero Buildings and in that kind of high-end sustainable design?
Well, even in the Taj Mahal of Net Zero Buildings or high-performing buildings, daylighting is actually going to, in terms of design, trump whatever lighting system is going to happen. And the reason I say that is because with the importance of daylighting, that's the highest return on your investment. So in the schematic design phases of a building, you're going to see the importance of, you know, narrow floor plates so that you can have, you know, as much of the floor plate lit by daylight as much of the time as possible. And so really in the beginning it's daylighting and massing, and then if you're going to have a lot of glass, depending on what exposure, what side of the building, it's going to be either fritted or you're going to have an automated sunshade that kind of follows the path of the sun, or like 3M has a light shelf film that can go on the window and acts as a light shelf where it directs 80% of the light into the ambient atmosphere. So then beyond daylighting, you will have an LED scheme or you know, still even linear fluorescence, but really the main importance in that lighting scheme is the controls and the fact that you only want the lights on when and where you need the light directed. So that is where the controls and the sensors are really, really key in your lighting scheme. And I think that one thing that's going to develop, or should, we hope, develop a little bit more is task and ambient lighting. And the combination of the two is really, really important, because to create proper task lighting, I think you need like 6 times brighter lighting than in an ambient lighting. And people really need to grasp that, because if you're lighting the whole area, like to get a task accomplished, you're really wasting about a third of the energy and the light that goes along with that.
Right, and the other thing too, and I think this is where design gets a little frustrated, is if you're retrofitting a building, for instance, and the old scheme was 2x2, troffers every 6 feet on center for a 100 by 100 floor plate. If you go to introduce, say, occupancy sensing or daylight harvesting, sure, you can control those troffers. Let's say you retrofit them with LED troffers, but it's a little weird to have parts of your ceiling sort of darken out and create these dark patches, and people don't react to it positively. And I think it's because task lighting hasn't been thought of. One light source is doing everything, and so you're dimming both your task and your ambient light, and it just makes the space feel strange. Yeah. So the best retrofits are really redesigns. It's really when you go in and look at the lighting scheme in totality and say, okay, how are we addressing the ambient light? How are we addressing task lighting? How are we addressing accent lighting? Where are we drawing people's eyes? And that's something lighting designers will talk about forever. I mean, that's just good lighting design.
A layered lighting scheme.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've talked a lot about controls and sensors. I mean, a big part of our audience for this show are the AV integrator crowd, the folks that have to make this stuff work. The folks that commission systems, whether it's lighting control systems, tying into AV systems. Have you seen progress in terms of either control protocols or even individual products that make their lives easier? Is it getting easier to commission these buildings, or is it still very complicated?
I'm going to say that it's still very complicated. Okay. One of the last commissioning agents that I spoke with was hired by the government for, I can't remember what building right now, but it'll be in the next issue of AP magazine. But he was held on for 16 months, so a year and then a quarter after that, to really perfect the the controls and to optimize everything, whether it's the lighting or the HVAC or if there's refrigeration involved or whatever. The same thing with the Net Zero Walgreens project. Evanston, I was talking to them. It was almost a year later after the opening of the store, and they were still running through every single part of their integrated design and tweaking and optimizing systems. So, I mean, I think it just takes a lot of time and patience, and you have to be detail-oriented and persevere.
Well, and I think it's also setting client expectations, right? It's setting client expectations that you're going to be working on this. This is a project. It's going to take maybe a year, maybe 2 years to really fully optimize the system, because people are going to live in it, and we have to really examine what the pain points are after installation, because it's not like putting in LED tubes and walking away. It's more complicated than that. It's about designing a system that people are going to live with for years. And so, and frankly, in commercial buildings, occupancy changes. Different companies will take over different spaces. You'll have different leases, different people leasing spaces who have different needs. I had a situation like that a couple of weeks ago where it was a group that did a lot of copy editing for 2 years, and then a new group came in that did graphic design and stared at huge screens all day, and they didn't want as much ambient light. Different tenants mean different needs. All right, so as we're heading down the home stretch here, let me ask you.
What? To add to it, because you mentioned something about the dark spot in the ceiling.
Yeah.
And I really did want to talk a little bit about ceilings and lighting design, because there's some really...
Listen, don't let me stop you. Go ahead. Tell me what...
Some really exciting stuff, I think, going on in that area. And the first thing I wanted to talk about is the Paran's light hybrid light system. It's distributed by Wasco. I think they're usually known for their skylighting, but it's a hybrid, 2x2 fixture or 2x4, and it harvests daylight into the building. It doesn't have to be a skylight like in the sense of a conventional skylight where you have to be on the top floor. It uses fiber optics to bring the light down into the core of a building.
Okay.
But the hybrid part of it is that it's also an integrated LED with a photo sensor.
Got it.
As the daylight is not adequate, the LED light comes up, and and subtly enough that you don't notice that awkward transition between daylight and LED.
Is it like is it also tunes the white light, or is it, because my that'd be my one question, like, does it match daylight as it comes through, or is it like just it is what it is, 3500K or 4000K or whatever it is?
I think it just is what it is. I'm not sure that it's tunable, but it wouldn't surprise me if they would have that be the next iteration of that product.
Yeah, of course.
And then another thing I think that's exciting that I think also came out a little bit before its time, and this is the Emerge Alliance, and what they've been really pushing for is kind of a smart ceiling grid and smart products to go into the ceiling, and they're very modular, and so it's like Legos or like plug and play, where the DC to DC lighting can eliminate any power losses from the transfer from DC to AC, and then also this smart grid in the ceiling. You just have a light and you plug it in where you need it. So when client needs and tenant needs do change, you have total flexibility because of your ceiling design. So I think those are two exciting things that are on the forefront in terms of daylighting and LEDs and integrating renewable technology. And
that brings up, like, I have a whole other set of questions now for you, because now I'm thinking about how like, with the pace of innovation being as rapid as it is, how do we keep contractors in the loop? How do we keep the guys that are actually doing the installation work, the men and women that are doing the installation work, up to speed? Because it's tough. That's a big pain point, I think, in the process, is that the designer's on board, the client's on board, the check is cut, everything's ready to go, and the contractors are just like, whoa, we've never done this before. How does it work? How does it go in? I don't want to screw it up. And then the whole, the brakes get put on the whole job. And I wonder what your thoughts are. When we're already at a little long, but that's all right. Just on how training should go. How do manufacturers keep their products specifiable?
Well, the answer to me, the first thing that pops into my head is the Joint Apprenticeship and Training Center in San Leandro, California, is IBEW Local 595. And so it is a training facility for this chapter of electricians, and their whole facility is net zero, and it was a net zero retrofit. And the idea was to be the training of the future for these electricians, so that they do have all these lighting technology controls experience right there in the building. And they are learning that because they know that's the future of their livelihood, and they want to be able to just jump in and go and be that installer and be that knowledgeable contractor that's not freaked out to technology. So I think that is maybe manufacturers should reach out to unions.
That's one way to do it. And the other thing that I would say on the specifier side is if you're doing something that no one's ever done before, or it's a product that's fairly new on the market, write into your specification that at the time of bid, that any bidding contractor needs to put in a training session with a certified technician on the product. So that it's written at the start that nothing's going to get ordered, nothing's going to clear submittal until somebody goes out and gets training. Because if all the contractors are doing that at the start, then it's a level playing field in terms of the bidding process. You know, every contractor's got to build in 20 hours of training time, and it's not a weird thing you have to do after the fact that they didn't budget for. I think there's ways as a specifier to be responsible for making sure that everybody on the project is up to speed, and ultimately it rests with whoever drives the project.
Totally agree. So I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
No. I guess what I would finish up with is if you were pulling out your crystal ball and you had to look into the rest of 2015 and early, well, here's the near future. It's an easier thing to predict. Light Fair is coming up in a couple months. I've already heard some rumors about what's going to be debuted from some companies, and there's some exciting stuff coming. But if you had your crystal ball out, what are some of the things that you're looking for, expect to see, or hope to see when you go to Light Fair this year?
Well, in terms of the pace of innovation, I would just say in 1 year from now, expect Moore's Law to apply to LEDs and to controls. I think that Bluetooth and wireless will be standard, expected, to be beginning to be integrated into LED product. I also think that you're going to see a lot more applications in terms of LED. They're not, just going to be exterior and interior architectural lighting. I mean, there's a whole market out there for UV cure. I know that Kevin built an actual UV cure light in the shape of whatever was being manufactured. I think that there's also going to be a big explosion of urban agricultural lighting in the LED world. Then I also think that you might see a lot more healthcare lighting, and how lighting is going to affect patient outcomes and even worker satisfaction and retention in the healthcare environment, whether it's the patient room or a long-term care facility. So I think those are growth areas that we'll see a lot for LED. But I think there's just going to be a lot more maybe OLED technology. There's been some really beautiful sconces and accent lighting, I think, that's come out of OLED technology. And so I would expect to see a little bit more of that as the price comes down and fixture designers become more familiar and more comfortable with that technology. I think that's...
I think it's still, it's a really exciting time, and it's going to be an exciting time for a while yet. When lighting moved into LED, I think what ended up happening is now we're at the same pace of innovation as hardware in the computer world and in the microprocessor world, where we saw static lighting technology for the better part of a century, where halogen bulbs, metal halide bulbs, there was improvements, but they were marginal, and they were year over year, and it took a long time. The pace of innovation with LED is exponentially faster, and so that's opening up all these other possibilities with digital communication technologies. And so I think the lighting business today and the lighting business 5 years from now are going to be two totally different things. And it's up to us to just sort of keep it going and keep up with it.
The other one thing that I forgot to mention is also a lot of materiality and a lot of material innovation when it comes to fixture design. For instance, last year at NeoCon, 3M their designer, Byron Trotter, was working with Todd Bracher, and they brought this beautiful light fixture to market, and it was there at NeoCon. It was very accessible to to interior designers and lighting designers alike. And then there's also Light Art by Freeform in Seattle. I think they're doing some incredible, beautiful things with their materials and finishes, and they're turning a lot of these fixtures into modular and flexible designs, which again is where you can kind of capture the hearts and the minds of lighting designers, interior designers, and architects, because they say, oh, I can do this with that thingy, and it just seems like so much design freedom and opportunity for expression. And I think that's what really speaks to this market, and so I think we'll continue to see more material innovation. But my LED controls, or my LED driver fantasy, it's like someone said, oh, putting an LED is like putting a computer in the ceiling. Well, if that's true, why can't we just download updates?
Right.
So there is no, obsolescence.
Right.
It would be just like driving a Tesla, where when there's an upgrade to the system, it just automatically downloads to your car. And
right.
That would be the best, if you could just, oh, well, I have a scheduled update for this, lighting thing, and I'll just accept that update, and now, oh, we have more tunability, or we have more.
I think that we'll start to see more flexibility in future products as that demand is seen, and I think that's where it comes back to that consumer conversation. When people get used to the ability, they're going to want it across their lives, and that's when the manufacturers are going to have to respond and say, well, we're right here, we can do it. And that's where I think we'll start to see some of that, and it's going to change what the AV integration is going to be, because we're going to want more and more screens to talk to each other. We're not going to want these silos anymore, and we're already starting to see that. But that's a whole other conversation that we can get into. Megan, thank you very much for coming on the show. You were a thrill.
Thank you. This was so much fun. I love talking about all of the neat stuff that I get to experience, because I don't get to talk about it. I usually just write about it.
Well, listen, we would be happy to have you on again and have your colleagues on from the magazines. I think we could have some really interesting roundtables and some other conversations, and I think the audience would really enjoy it. So thank you again for coming on. You're welcome. Have a nice night. Yeah, you too. I'm going to do my last little piece here that George always makes fun of me for, but the Lighting Guys Show is a podcast produced in association with AVNation.tv. Head over to their site and check out all the other podcasts that deal with all things AV. I am James J.P. Bedell. You can find me on Twitter at James Bedell. Megan, where can the good folks that listen to this show find you? I am at Megatorial on Twitter, and I'm also the Product Wire blogger for Architectural Products Magazine. So it's arch-products.com/productwire, and there's usually some neat new stuff every couple weeks, about 6 products, and some kind of interesting story for the day. Outstanding. Thank you very much, and we'll have links to many of the products that were mentioned today. I won't promise all of them, but many of the products that we mentioned today. We'll make a list and we'll have them linked up on the site. I actually planned on this being very interactive with Twitter, so I'm very excited to provide those online soon. That's because you're awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. Have a great night. Thank you. You too, JP.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.